everybody after this session as well. And with that said, I will go in and we could just have a couple of announcements to share before I kick it over to Alan and Glenn to get into the meat of today's presentation. So thank you everybody for hopping on to join us for our monthly webinar series. This one's going to be a very interesting topic around change management and really how to get people to shift from entrenched habits that they may have within the construction space. So I've got my colleague Alan Boyku here, who is one of our co-founders here at Nyali and heads up our UX team, and our guest speaker, who we'll go into more detail on in a bit in terms of her background, and that's Gwen Myatt with Graham Construction. So just some general housekeeping notes for this session. We're recording it, so we will get that link out to everybody after for today. And as well, if you have any questions throughout, put them in the chat. We actually do have a book up for grabs for whoever asked the best question today, which I'll share more in a moment. Now, before we dive into it, I did just want to share a couple of upcoming events that we have happening throughout the remainder of the year. On November 13th, we've got our CEO, Nancy Knowlton, who's going to be doing a breakfast talk with Intergen. This is going to be in person in Calgary for anyone who's local here. It's also going to be broadcast via Zoom. Would definitely recommend tuning in for this session. If you don't know the history behind Nancy, her and her husband, Dave Martin, are prolific entrepreneurs here in Alberta. They were the founders behind Smart Technologies, which if you were in school in the 2000s, they really took over the education space with interactive technology. So it's a pretty incredible story to hear how they started a company that rose to that level of fame, but then also took that innovation over into the construction sector with Nyali. From there, we've got Digital Construction Week North. That's actually also happening on November 13th. Alan will be in the UK, joined with our business partner, Ascente, and that will be happening in Manchester. So if you're over on the other side of the pond, we definitely encourage you to check that out if you're in the Northern European region. In addition, we've got our next Nyali webinar series. We're going to be having Brian McEachern from PCL Construction join us. That's going to be on November 28th. And further, we've got the Toronto Buildings Show, December 4th to 6th. Our booth will be booth 2053. It's a pretty massive show. And if you're in the Toronto area and you're interested in checking this out, the code I've posted in the slide here will get you a free expo pass. And I will post the links to this in a second, just in the chat here, if anybody is interested in going to these events. You can also follow us on our LinkedIn page for the most up-to-date info. Now, before I pass it over to Alan and Gwen, I did just want to mention, we really encourage you to ask questions on these sessions. We do have a copy of Rich Seiler's The Pole Planning Playbook up for grabs. We will email we'll get in touch with you after the webinar and ship a copy out to you. So definitely ask us questions throughout the presentation. And with that, I will pass it over to Alan and Gwen.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Laura. Lots of good things happening in the future. I had a chance to speak to Gwen at one point, and she started telling me some very interesting things in her work, and thought, oh, I think that we need to get some of the things that we're talking about out into the field. Very interesting. So welcome, Gwen, and thank you for taking the time to share today. And why don't we just start with you giving us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got to today.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Gwen Myatt. I'm currently a lean advisor with Graham Construction based out of Calgary. I just surpassed 40 years in the construction industry. So started when I was really young. I was never an academic, so I couldn't follow in the path of my father, which was architect. So because there was lots more schooling, I was always good at tinkering and good with my hands. So, at the time, trade school was a good option. Tough industry, I know, but and this was back in Wales in the UK. So I started off as an apprentice carpenter and essentially worked my way from a carpenter to a general a carpentry contractor, and then to a general contractor myself. And UK industry, like I said, is quite brutal. Lots more people than there is work, and it was tough being in business. So in 1999, I took a role as a general foreman with a regional general contractor, and then from there progressed to what we call a site manager over there, which is a superintendent, and then moved to Canada in 2005 to start working with Graham Construction as a superintendent. And I've been with Graham, or I'm with Graham until this date. So that's 19 years with Graham and essentially 24 years as a superintendent. So the lean role is I started my lean journey in 2015. It got introduced, and I was one of the people we're going to talk about today. Of like, woof, not sure about that. It's like, well, this is the way it's done. But I started studying it and learning more about it, and thought, you know what, this actually makes things a little bit easier. And you know, from back in my contractor days, it was always crazy. It was schedule, and people were yelling at each other and stuff. And it's like, there's got to be a better way. So again, flip back to 2015. Yeah, it's certainly opened my eyes. And what I can say is lean and the last planner system is a better way of executing construction projects. I love skiing, love motorcycling, watching Formula One, and those are my hobbies. And we were just talking about it prior to everyone getting on. My weekend gig is I'm actually a ski instructor, so I use some of the same principles from my ski instructing as I do on the job site, and vice versa. A collaborative approach of teaching, getting to know people, and helping understand them helps deliver better products.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice blend of things that actually help you learn about, new ways of doing things, especially in education, that's for sure. And it is education. So I was looking at your title, and why don't you tell us, like, what does a lean specialist actually do?
So there's a lot that we do, but a simple way of putting it is we guide the project team through. One of them is the unlearning process, which we'll get further into, of how people have traditionally done things. And we help the whole project team. So that can be the owner, the consultants, the general contractor herself, all of the trade partners. We help coach them how to be more collaborative, getting work ready for the job site so that we can get the flow on the project site. So I go to the job sites at various different times and coach the teams, help facilitate planning sessions.
Yeah, and I think you said it in another way. You said, you're an agent of change. So you're the change agent. So why don't you get into a little bit of, there's lots of different types of change. Like, why don't you talk a little bit about that, and then that'll probably lead us into the habits that you're dealing with, or unlearning or learning new ones.
So what we've been finding over the last number of years is delving deeper into what are the problems that we're dealing with on the job site at the various different levels. There's some in design, there's some upfront of pre-construction, and obviously there's lots of issues in project execution. And one of the key things that we're finding is that we need to change is the make ready process. So when we talk about the make ready process, that's making sure, and we've probably a lot of people on this call, if they're in construction execution, the drawings aren't up to par when we get to go to the job site to build them. Okay, so that's one of those things. Essentially, the work put into the work, i.e. the drawings, weren't ready. So that's not ready. So that creates a stop-start process on the job site. We have no flow. Same thing, a lot of times we get contracts on a Friday, and somebody says we need to start on Wednesday next week. It's like, okay, so then there's the time that you need to actually mobilize and procure everything to get to this. That part of the work isn't ready again. Okay, so you get to the job site, you have to stop. Things don't show up when you need them because nobody's had time. They promise you stuff. Yeah, we can get there. So, and then obviously when we're at the job site, back to the drawings. But okay, how many times have we said to people, you know what, you need to get 10 more people here for Monday, and then they come there. There's no plan put in place. Everyone comes there, they start looking at each other. What are we here to do? Who are you? They don't know anywhere. So again, we've not made the work ready. That's one of the key things that we at Graham, and I think everyone else that's probably in lean in the general contracting business is trying to change, is make everything ready so that it excuse me, so the work can flow and we don't have this constant stop start, because when work stops, there's always cost involved, and there's always cost and waste involved.
All right. So what are the so how do you go in and then I don't know, I guess the change that's needed is quite self-evident. Like what are your practices in doing that? Like if somebody on this call goes, oh yeah, that's us too. What, like, tell us about a couple of the things that you've done to actually reduce that readiness or increase the readiness, pardon me.
What I'm currently doing right now is so I work for our buildings division, so that's right across North America. So what I'm starting to do now is go to visit all of our project teams shortly after award, and I do it's around a 3-hour session with the project team and what I call a team alignment training, and we talk through all the tools that we have. There's make ready logs, there's milestone planning, we're going to be doing pool planning, daily huddles, weekly work planning, all the tools that we have out there as part of the last planner system. And we talk about that and make sure that our team is aligned. Then from there, what we do is we create a milestone calendar, which is a snapshot of the whole job. It's key dates and everything that's taken out of your contract schedule, and we put it on the wall and determine when we need to plan work, when owners and consultants need to make any decisions, so the last responsible moment, and we work through it from there. And then so that's what we do right at the beginning of the job, and then at the periods we've defined. So in that, if we're just starting a job and we've got just say you were doing a tower and you've got a parkade, so you would need excavation contractor, piling contractor, concrete guy, mechanical, electrical, waterproofing, rebar, and maybe your company foreman. We get that group of people into a room, and then we do what we call our trade partner training, which is similar to it's specifically to the trades, and we do some flow activities, we do some pool planning in there, and so we get them on board and show them to help them understand, ask them any questions, get to know them, and then we do that periodically through the job as the different teams come into the project.
So it sounds like you really have taken the last planner should, can, will, did, and you do the should internally, it sounds like, and then you get to the will. Like, are you measuring? Like, how are you measuring and getting better, say, in your own area or department or across your company? Like, are you seeing a difference?
We are started. So there's only two of us. There's myself and my manager across the whole of North America.
Okay.
So we are starting to see more traction now of projects seeing the benefits of it and
Oh, good.
how it can help them. we don't have a specific measuring tool for that, but on the projects, obviously we have a weekly work plan where we're measuring the PPC,
Right.
and that's the measurement tool for the projects of, are we seeing your PPC going up? Because if we are, the job is going to be more efficient. You've got a more cohesive team,
Mm,
and yeah, you're going to end up with better results.
nice. So part of our title today is about habits. Just name some of the, I'll just call them bad habits, the habits that you've seen over the years. You mentioned a couple in your preamble, but why don't you just list a few, and maybe some of them will resonate with people and they might even ask some questions about them.
So, yeah, I've got a few amounts. I'm old school is one that comes up all the time. Why do I need to change? I've always
Mm,
done it I've always done it this way.
yeah, we built
Um,
the Eiffel Tower, right?
yeah. Um, I'm in charge. Everyone needs to listen to me.
Mm,
hmm and there's another good one. The subs sign the contract. They have to do what we tell them.
mm,
I think something that's kind of been ingrained in over the years of everyone in this business is sandbagging,
mm.
not being respectful. Because this industry, at the end of the day, yes, we have a result there that we can look at, but at the end of the day, this is actually a people industry.
Mm.
And then I know I'm talking here with a digital platform people, but one of the other bad habits that we've seen, it might just be specific to Graham, but some teams rushing to go digital without learning the process first
Right.
gets them in a bit of a pickle, which is why here you can see this is a not digital version of Niali on the wall. So
Yeah,
this helps get everyone up to the board and talking and doing the process. So learning the process properly.
absolutely. And we've seen that as well. I mean,
Mhm,
you give somebody a tool and they're not ready. Well, it's like your skiing example. If you don't understand the process of skiing and edges
mhm.
and gravity, you can have
Yeah,
that $1,000 pair of skis, but it ain't going to help you.
that's right. Mhm.
So let's look on the bright side. I mean, I'm going
Yeah.
to be a devil's advocate here and say,
Mhm.
the buildings have been built in the
Yep.
past.
Mhm.
Maybe not always on time or on budget. We know that
Mhm.
same old story, but there must be some good habits. I mean, the construction industry is getting things done and always
Mhm.
has in some form. So, what are some of the good habits that you've seen over the years that you want to actually amplify?
Mhm. I mean, there's, right now I can only kind of speak for Calgary area, but there's, no, but I have been out to BC as well. There's lots of good trades out there that have done some amazing work over the years.
Mm,
And you know what? Trades are adaptable. Well,
mm,
everyone in this business is adaptable to a degree. And yeah, we don't always get the information we need. We get weather delays, we get all this. And yes, as you said, we managed to get through, get the jobs done. So you do get a lot of camaraderie out there on the jobs. Um, so kudos to all those people out there that's managed to pull through that, they've missed the kids' sporting event or some family
mm,
events and stuff just because, they need to be at work to get the work done. Okay, so um, there's also teams out there that's trying to implement lean or are implementing some small parts of lean that don't have any support. It's just plugging away. They come and join. The webinars like this to get some tips. Look on Google, but then they don't have maybe manager approval or something like that. So again, kudos to those people for trying. Uh, and yeah, it's a long journey. We don't get to the end of the path overnight. So we have to keep trying. Um, and you know what? Good thing is allow people to fail as well.
mm.
We have to fail sometimes. to learn to improve.
So, and from that regard, like, is that part of your, let's talk about some of your techniques now that tips and tricks or however your experiences that you can pass along, because that whole idea of fail faster, learn from your, this is a learning moment rather than a criticism moment. And why don't you talk about some of the things that have worked for you that, I don't know, they could almost end up being a poster, I suppose, in a trailer, but why don't you touch on some of the, like you've talked a little bit about the what, let's talk about the how.
So, like I talked to, I briefly mentioned it before, is again something, and I'm I've been on this journey since 2015, so it's 9 years already, which is a long time. I'm still learning every day, and every time I go and do a presentation or work with a team, I'm learning myself. Okay, how can I improve? How can I be better tomorrow than I am today? What happened yesterday is already gone, so that's something to think about, is just always be on the positive. How can I be better tomorrow than I am today? So that's a little inner self thought. But again, I always start off around the room is, Kate found out everyone's names, which I always forget right away. And then what the role is, like, okay, tell me about yourself a little bit. And what do you like? And just like I did at the beginning there, I told you about myself and what I like. That helps me figure out how, because everyone's individual. Absolutely everyone is individual. No one's the same, okay? So people learn at different stages. People understand differently. So that's why a lot of the stuff I do is presentations. Well, I learn visually, so the presentation stuff works for me. If I was just to listen to somebody all day, it would be in here and out there, and I
can relate to that.
So, again, that's learning. Again, from me being in this industry and coming up from the boots on the ground, I understand how a lot of people in the industry learn. So I can relate to this. That helps me get across to them. Again, allow everyone to speak and provide input. Huge element. That's the respect for people bit, because you might have some of the introverts in the room, somebody that doesn't really talk, but you know what? They probably can come up with some great answers and ideas, rather than just the the big loud person or loud people at the end of the room that's always vocal above everyone. It's have to let everyone talk. Got to remember they're the experts. I know I do know a lot about construction, but I don't know everything. Absolutely, I don't know everything. We've hired some of these people because they're the experts in that field of be it mechanical, electrical, sprint, formwork, whatever. They're the experts. You have to remember they are the experts. My job then is to get all of those experts in the room talking to each other and working together. So that's where the training and the coaching comes. And then part of that is, ask them challenging questions sometimes, because some of the people in construction are some are not talkative. Sometimes you'll ask them a question, you'll get a short, brief answer that doesn't really answer the question. So it's like, and again, that's where I leverage my experience a little bit. It's like, okay, can you elaborate on that? Or what about, so if you do that, how does it affect Johnny down the room there? Ask them challenging questions, and it helps them to open up and think outside of the box, which in ways of the past that we've done it, we don't usually get there. And then you can open up and you get all these conversations going up, and then all this. So I did a train. Actually, it was this training, this planning session right behind me. We just went through it. It's like, okay, this is a hospital we're doing, and it's area A. So what are all the jobs that we've got to do in area A ready for drywall? So we started listing, and I had a big eighth big presentation chart on the wall, start writing them all down. Anything else? Anything else? And just keep going around the room. And then we filled up the whole sheet, put a line down the middle, both sides, so it was completely full of tasks. And I said, okay. So if we'd have gone down this mode of, if we'd have talked about this work in traditional methods, would we have got all these tasks? And everyone's kind of, no, not even close. So, okay, so if we're not even close to getting all those, how do we get a proper plan when we've missed half of the stuff?
Mm.
So again, it's just chatting with the people and asking those challenging questions. Another tip is, what I found is ask them what they need.
Mm.
What do you need? Because very rarely, I know I've been a superintendent, other superintendents, they never ask. It's always, this is what you're going to do, this is how we're doing it. So ask them what we need, and it's like, oh. And then what would you like me to help you with? That's a huge one. And then all of a sudden these people open up and it's like, oh, well, actually, they're not just here to yell at me and shout at me. They want to actually help me get my work done. Opens it up like this. And when everyone sees that, the dynamic of the room changes.
Right. Yeah, it certainly makes a lot of sense, that's for sure. And it's obvious you are an instructor that's trying to help somebody learn something, and it's very parallel. So so you've been at it for several years, and you talked about it takes time. It takes time to, it's psychological and organizational change, we'll call it.
Yeah.
And which is, in a way, it's culture. So how is it going, like in Graham? And then I want you to extend that to what you're seeing with your peers out in industry. Is there a shift, or why is there, like, is there movement?
There is movement. It's super slow though. It really is super slow. So I've been in this position full time for nearly 2 years.
Right.
And it's been mentally taxing for sure.
Right.
Because we're Graham, and some of the other contractors out, some of the big guns. It's a big aircraft carrier or battleship, right? It's they're moving in the one direction, but it's when it start trying to turn the battleship is quite slow. So that's I don't know if that's a good analogy. So we are seeing some change. Some projects, there's projects in various districts across the country. Some have a little bit better uptake than others. So some of them is, I think, the old school stuff. I've always done it this way, or the egos are still in the way. It's like, or they're some people, and what we have to be careful of in the industry is, I think the phrase that's used out there is fake lean. Some say, oh yeah, well we're doing this and we're doing that, and telling the boss or the VP, yeah, we're doing lean, and it's like, well, you're not really. So it is a little bit slow. Let's say we are starting to gain some traction between the two of us and getting a bit more. Like this morning, I was just on an interview for a project that we're doing or hoping to get out in Ontario. So again, introduce the lean to it. This is how we're going to help you as an owner improve the job. Out in Vancouver a few weeks ago, there's a few teams gone on there. There was one project I went to specifically, and then another couple of teams have come on board, so we're seeing it. I know we've got a couple of jobs up in Edmonton that I'm going to be going to shortly as well. So it's great, but in the scheme of things, we've probably got 100 or 120 projects going, and the amount that I'm actually coaching right now is quite low, we'll say, which is disappointing, because it's something that every job, big or small, can benefit from.
Right.
And
Are you hearing similar things out in, you were at Congress, and I'm sure
I,
you linked up with some of your peers. What are you hearing from other lean, I'll just call them lean specialists, you use that word.
similar kind of problems.
So it's
Some
industry. It's not Graham, it's
it's not
not
a Graham
them, or
specific. It's
right.
it's an industry problem. It certainly is.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't know if it's a problem or if it's an opportunity. It's a little bit, interesting way of looking at it.
I think it's probably a bit about some people. It's certainly an opportunity to improve, because I don't know if anyone on the call there knows that statistically, and it was prior to COVID, statistically, construction executes 54% of planned work on a weekly basis, which is pretty dismal. Actually, it's shocking, that number one. So anything we can do to improve, we have to explore those avenues. And I've always done it this way, or why should I change? Doesn't work, because 54% is, in my mind, is not an acceptable number. We have to go to an owner with a schedule saying we're going to do it in 24 or 36 months, but in the back of my mind, it's like, well, hang on, how can we actually perform that
Right.
timeline when we can only do 50%, technically 50% of our work each week? So
Right.
we've got to certainly explore every avenue possible to increase that number.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, the things that you're talking about, just with the uptake, that we've seen, there's more lean specialists, there's more lean directors, there's more lean managers. Like there clearly is, a desire or, to move. And like you say, I'm telling you, once that battleship turns, look out. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Why don't we give you a minor break and get some people in with some questions for you. I don't know if Laura, if any have come in. You can put them in the chat, or I don't know if there's a Q&A. I think there's a Q&A section here. Let me just take a look, see what we've got for you,
There's a
Gwen. See if
couple of
somebody
lots.
can stump us.
Oh, sorry. We got a question here from Judy, and she was asking, how do you take the pull plan tags and incorporate them into Primavera or Microsoft scheduling software? So basically, the work that you're doing in the pull planning process, can you get that back into the master schedule? And if so, how are you going about doing that?
That's a great question. So thank you. Yeah. So basically, yeah, that's a plan. What we do then is we put it into a production schedule. So it would depend on the makeup of your company, whether you have schedulers or not. This project right here, they do have a scheduler, and one that I was down in Washington, they had a scheduler. We did, because it was a fly in, fly out job, we did 2 days of planning and did 9 plans over a hospital, and the scheduler came down. He took photographs of all of this, and then he was going to spend the next 2 days of inserting that information into P6 schedules. And I believe on that project, they are actually putting it into one of the master schedules to see what it did timeline. Some projects don't want to do that. They just create actual production schedules and then put them in a schedule folder. And then from there, we use that information to create weekly work plans. Hopefully
Excellent
that
question.
answered your question. But it was a great question.
Awesome. Really appreciate it, Judy. Any other questions from our audience? You can also come off mute if you prefer to just talk your question, or just ping me in the chat. We can take you off mute if it's easier to explain it. We'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts.
So I'm going to jump in with a question until we get another one. Is part of the like, sometimes we hear about, oh, those people over there in the office, they don't know what's going on and they make a schedule and give it to us. And like,
Mhm,
how is that affecting? You started by talking about make ready.
mhm,
Is there a gap there between the office and the site that, is a process issue? And I'm talking about P6 to the weekly or the daily work, what's the
mhm.
meshing method?
That has typically in the past been a problem, and again, it's depends on structure of individual businesses.
Right.
And there are, again, it's some of those bad habits of it's the old school. Some superintendents are the belief that um, the schedule is the project manager's job. They got to update it, they've got to create it. I was completely the other way around. It's like you know what? I'm going to build the schedule because I have to build it. It's going to be my schedule.
Right.
And I've tried mentoring people to think that way. It's you've got to build it. You know what? You have the experience in the field. That's I'm not knocking any project managers, but you know everything that needs to go into there, so you understand it. You know how much productivity. I know everyone goes, we've got productivities and stuff from past, but that's the past. You got to deal with the now, and certainly now things are a lot different. You can't do, I don't say 1,000 feet of wall a week or whatever. That maybe you could have back in the day because there were more people available. So as a superintendent, um, you have to own that. But what we do when we're doing the milestone schedule at the beginning of the job as well is the project manager, the superintendent, the PC, and an ops manager, and anyone else that you want in that room, do that together. So we've brought all of this back into the office right up to the beginning to create collaboration from the beginning to try and eliminate those problems of us and them. Because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, we're a team. It's all about the team and the people. And if we have no team, we've got big issues.
Yeah. And I've heard a couple contractors actually say there's a schedule and then there's a plan, which is what you're talking about. You
Right?
need to build the plan. It's quite
Mm-hmm.
different. I've got a
Yeah,
couple
there
more
is.
questions for you here too.
Scheduling and planning are different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people
How do
can't
you
understand.
implement? Here's a question for you, and this is specific to Graham. How do you
Mhm.
implement lean at Graham with those who are hesitant to adapt? Like, what's your secrets? You've given us a couple tips, but does somebody ever shut down, and what do you do with them?
Mhm.
Or they're less enthusiastic, we'll say.
That's the that's where the training sessions come in. Because again, I've had those people, and it's like there was one specifically last year when in the first 6 months of me doing this job, it was like the person didn't want to be in the planning session. It's like, you know what, this is great. I just want to be outside. It's like, but you know what? We're just it's the coaching thing. It's so help them understand, talk to them, show them you got to do this on a person by person basis as well. So it's not always going to be the same. It's like talk to them, ask them why they don't think it works, why they don't like it, and then show them some stuff. It's okay. A lot of the time is people show up to it when we do a pull plan. We focus on a lot on the handoffs, and the
Right.
handoffs are okay. I'm coming to dig a hole. What do I need in order to dig the hole? So I
Yeah.
need some survey, I need a geotechnical, I need contract, I need an excavator. It's list those things and we talk about those. And helping talk about those things helps get those people drawn back in. This
Right.
project, this planning right here, some of the yellow stickers was medical gas guy, and he was one of those people. He was like, yeah, this is great, but I don't understand it. And that's kind of like, so we talk through and talk through them. It's like, okay, what do you actually need to do that task? It's like, oh, well, I need this. Okay, write it on the sticker. What about this? Okay, write it on the sticker.
Right.
There you go. And then the next one. So this here makes sure that that work, when you come to do it, these trades are already done.
Right. So you're helping them with.
It's a little bit of hand holding and guiding and yeah, I guess.
Those are good words, I think. Yeah, those are good
terminology, a little bit of spoon feeding. Okay, it's
right.
we can't just say this is it and I'm out. Have to help and guide.
So
them.
here's another approach. Brian's got an interesting question. How much of the lean processes do you add actually into your trade partner contracts? Like, do you do that?
We do. So we talk about pool planning, weekly work planning, daily huddles. We what else do we put in there?
Is there anything about, make ready meetings? You talk about IPD, getting involved in pre-construction, and I assume that would be contractual as well?
Yeah, so right now we have it in the appendices. It's
okay.
We're trying to push to get it actually as part of the main contract, because then we know it's in there, rather than, because the appendix is or supplemental conditions is then project manager specific. So we're pushing to try and get it in the main part of the contract. So then it's in there. This is what we're doing. And something else is at pre-award, we tell everyone before you got the contract, this is how we'll be running the project.
Right.
We're implementing lean and the last planner system.
That's excellent. I think that sets the expectation, and it sort of makes it easier for you to come in the room. That's for sure. I have another question from James, and he's sharing this comment. I really struggle with the weekly being a planning meeting and not an execution preparation meeting. Do you have any advice on how to change the mindset from continually rescheduling plans and moving dates? So I guess it's the churn, like, the weekly becomes a churn meeting instead of preparing to execute next week and the week after and the week after, I think is what James is getting at.
Yeah. So again, one thing that we have to consistently remind people about, unfortunately, but we do, is, okay, remember, gang, this here is your plan. It's not one that we got handed from the office. It's not one that got handed from somewhere else. This is your plan. This is what you said we're going to do. And then we've put that now, and from this, we've gone to the production schedule and then created a weekly work plan. So in the weekly work plan, that's where we're discussing next week's work and getting the commitments. Okay, this is what you said. Are we going to do that? Are we going to do that? And then measuring the PPC for last week. How reliable was our plan last week? And measuring the variances if something didn't finish on time or didn't go as planned. That's a key part of it, is measuring it and finding out why. It's not a blame tool or by any way or means whatsoever. It's an improvement tool of how can we be better tomorrow than we did today.
Right.
You got missing information, bad time estimate, weather issues, materials not showing up, RFI answers, all the usual stuff. And we've included a oops, I forgot as well, because you know what, oops, I forgot happens. We all forget at times, but you use that tool, and then when you're using that tool, you can also use it as, okay, hey Alan, last 3 weeks here, you've had quite a number of oops, I forgot. What's so then we go off and
improve, right?
have some challenging conversations and look to improve.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's the tool we used to manage it. And it's like, you know what, maybe we need to revisit that plan and see what was it. If we're all failing every week, then maybe the plan wasn't right in the first place. We have to go back and visit it. But
Right.
we use this tool every single week. If you're doing it every single week, you can resolve issues quicker rather than getting out of hand. And yes, I've been there before, where you just got to continually keep pushing out, but we're not measuring and finding out it's just because people didn't show up, the weather or whatever. Okay, well,
it's an opportunity to get better. I guess
it's an opportunity to get better.
Culture.
Yes.
So we're at time, Gwen. I can't believe that the time went already. Are there any of the questions stand out as the question of the day for you? Either they were hard or interesting?
No, they were all good questions. They were all good questions.
Actually, on that note, it looks like we did get one more. It actually came into the chat instead of the Q&A. And Tarnai was asking, just how do you work out what to put in the contract about lean, and were there kind of any stages involved in that, and just in terms of introducing that at the contract level when you're dealing with the trades?
I remember what we've got in there now. We talk a lot of the stuff is stuff that would be available online. We talk about, I think we said it before, is just in time material. And again, that's something that people struggle with, is just in time deliveries. It's like, oh well, I'm starting at 10 o'clock, I'll bring it at 9. That's not what just in time means. It's just in time is about bringing the product for the work that you're working on. Again, it's one of those eliminating waste things, because we've all been on jobs where, hey, we got a great deal on structural steel, and now the whole job site's jam-packed with structural steel, and we can't work, we've got to move it. So that's not just in time deliveries. So structural steel comes in zones. You work concrete in zones and areas. Say that again. Can you say the question again?
Yeah, sure. So it was just around, when you're developing those contracts at the start of the job, what are some of those stipulations that you're maybe putting into the verbiage to tell trades that, like, hey, expect some lean on this project, and some of those methods. So I think that's sort of what the question was on.
Yeah, thanks. It's just in time deliveries, pull planning, weekly, daily huddles, weekly work planning. 5S, that's a key one as well. That's about keeping the job site clean and organized. We put that in there. And with the planning, we also state that the company has to send a person to the planning meetings that can make decisions on manpower and schedule. Because I know I've been in meetings before where people talk about stuff, and it's like, you know what, I'll need to call a project manager, I'll need to call a project manager, or I'll need to call the owner. Well, that person's not really the right person to be in the room to be part of the planning. It would be the project manager or the owner. So we write that in. The person you send has to be able to make decisions on manpower and schedule.
All right. Well, I'm going to call this to a close, but I'm actually going to pick the question, because I was sort of listening to all the answers that we got to. And I think the question I have to find where we are in the chat here, from Brian on the lean contracts. It took the conversation into an interesting area of making, lean practice contractual. So, Brian, if you could, I just posted Laura's email in the chat. If you could copy that and send her your details in terms of address, and we'll get that pull planning playbook out to you. So I'm going to call this to a close. And Gwen, thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me, Alan and Laura. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was an insightful conversation. I'm sure we'll see you around soon.
Yeah, and thank you for everyone online for attending. Have a great day.
Right on. Later, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.